Alrighty, so this is going to be my Fire Emblem Sacred Stones tier list. I've always wanted to make a tier list, and I just finished playing Ephraim's Route uh, on hard mode. And this is going to be my tier list based on how good I think the units are at helping you beat the game. Not necessarily going as fast as possible, but basically evaluating what every unit's worth provides and seeing how valuable they are in the grand scheme of things. Um, that's just basically how valuable they are in helping you beat the game, right? So we're gonna take things into account like availability, combat efficiency, obviously their class, um, and like any other unique aspects to these characters um, that help in beating the game. Sacred Stones isn't the hardest game in the world. However, in Ephraim's route towards the end, you do find a couple of chapters that are very annoying um, and difficult to navigate. That you're going to need like some specific strategies for, or not necessarily specific strategies, but more like creative strategies than just turtling. And I think it'll be illustrated as we go through. So we're going to talk about first about the prologue characters. So I think it's chapter 1 through 8. Obviously, we're going to start with Erica. Um, Erica, unfortunately, she's mediocre. She is relatively fast. She has a decent speed stat, a decent speed growth rate, but she's sword locked. And even when she promotes, she does get a horse, but she's only stuck with swords. However, her sacred twin sword, I forgot the name. It's Sigfield or something like that, is really good at tackling the end game, and tackling some of the monsters that show up in the later parts of the game. But otherwise, I don't think there's anything that she really does or excels at that merits her a deployment slot. And in Ephraim's route, uh, she's gone for all of like the really difficult chapters, and when she comes back, she'll be level 15. She'll have like some decent stats or like some okayish stats, but it's just too little, too late for her. At that point, we'll talk about Erica's route when we get to it. I'm gonna play Erica's route after doing this video, and then I'll probably come back and re-rank the characters on Erica's route. But for here, I think this is where she's at. Seth obviously is gonna be what is the best character in the game. He has amazing growths, amazing stats, access to. He's a paladin, so he has an 8 move. He starts with a silver lance, which you can like save for like emergency situations where you just need something deleted right then and there. He comes in clutch in so many of the difficult chapters in Ephraim's route. So stuff like chapter 12, that's that ridiculous ship uh, ship chapter where you have like the monsters board on the other ship, and it's literally like 20 units boarding on that ship, and then you have flyers flocking as well as the moguls flocking and flanking the all your units, and so you're gonna need someone that has good defense, good resistance, is able to have 1-2 range, and can deal with things relatively easily. And Seth is like your only character that can do that, and so he makes that chapter so much more tolerable. And he's just basically like your go-to for a long, long time in just picking a unit that you need deleted right then and there, or holding down a key spot so your other units can survive, and deleting everything that comes uh, your way. So it can be something like holding on a choke point and giving him the silver lance, and then on the enemy phase he'll just like crash into the enemies will crash into him over and over and over. Or you just need something to be deleted like right now, and then you can send him with his 8 move and just get that thing deleted, as well as rescue drop if necessary, right? Which is always valuable with horse units. Um, he he does kind of fall off towards the end. I don't want to say like horribly. I don't want to say horribly, but you can kind of start sensing that he starts falling off towards the end, right? You can kind of sense it, but but you can always give him like the sacred the Sacred Lance, the Sacred Twin Lance, the whatever it's called, and he'll be like pretty consistently great at that point as well. So, uh, you can mitigate him and you can use him for everything. There's no one else better than him. France, Franz, I should say, he's strong. I think he's pretty consistently going to end up being strong because you get him so early in the game. You get him at chapter 2. However, there is something to be said about his stats, and there's something to be said about his growths. His growths aren't the best, and he can get speed screwed, and he can get strength screwed. And for example, on this playthrough, he was strength screwed for a long time, and he only really came around to being like a reliable killer towards like the very end, when he got like a couple levels as a paladin. But for a long, long time, I had a lot of like frustration with Franz because I couldn't get him to kill anything, and he would be a cavalier like level 12, 13, 14, 15, a high level cavalier, and he still wouldn't be leveling up strength. And it was just so sad to see. Ultimately, you can mitigate that once his weapon rank goes high enough. You can give him like a killer lance or a silver lance or whatever. But um, it was just very frustrating. It was very frustrating getting him, seeing how like weak he was for such a long time, and he finally came around in I would say like the last 3 or 4 chapters of the game, which by the way they are some of the hardest chapters. So it's not nothing, but I think there's something to be said about how you can get speed screwed with him. But I think more often than not, the average Franz is going to be really strong. Um, and if he is kind of speed screwed, if you don't mind going a little slower, and then like investing in him and like actually going slower, you can make him a great knight, and he's gonna have like pretty decent stats at that point. Um, but again, you risk playing slower, and then that's just something that you're gonna have to like mitigate. Gilliam, I think I'm a little torn whether he's decent or mediocre. He's just a body that you can put in front of the enemies for your other units to get levels and to feed experience. So someone like Franz, right? Gilliam and Franz join in the same chapter, and it's nice when to have Gilliam put a body in there and take damage and dish some out, and then have Franz uh, do the finishing blow and get all the experience. uh, Gilliam is just not strong enough to do that consistently for a long time. He can only really do it for like a couple chapters, and that's it. I would say like maybe 3, maybe 4 chapters max. Like uh, yeah, like once after like chapter maybe 6 or 7, like I don't think Gilliam starts falling off, especially because you want to start like using your higher move units as well. So you have to accommodate for his 4 move all the time. He's very slow, so he can get doubled a lot, and his defense isn't the highest. He can get tagged pretty hard by some of the fighters in the game. So stuff like the soldiers that the game kind of throws at you in the beginning, he can do a pretty good job of like softening them up for your other units. But if he's like fighting a fighter, then you're at risk for he's at risk for dying. It's not like some of the other like knights in the game or in the other Fire Emblem games that are like pretty strong and have like great defense. This guy, he can die. Like his defense isn't like impenetrable. He can definitely die, and that's and to speak nothing about his resistance, which is absolutely garbage. So you can't even like think about sending him against any magical unit. So I think he serves a purpose, but he doesn't serve it for long. And so whether or not you put value in that, I think there's some value in that, and I'm like considering whether or not he should be decent. But for now, I'm gonna put him in mediocre. Vanessa, Vanessa. I think everyone always like says to play Vanessa. I'm not as hot on Vanessa. I'm not as hot on Vanessa. I think she's great. I think she's great, but I think she's not a combat unit. She's just not a combat unit. And in my estimation, you want to be consistent. You want someone that's able to be consistent and is able to give you options. Vanessa can give you options. Absolutely. You get her at chapter 2. She's very strong. She has great bases for a Pegasus Knight. I think she's level what 1 or 2. She's like a very low level Pegasus Knight with great bases. But Uh, she's just very weak. She's just very weak, and her growths keep her weak. She's gonna be very fast. That's true, and she can promote to a wyvern knight, and she's gonna have pretty decent stats, and her constitution is gonna go up, which again is gonna help her wield some of the heavier weapons. Um, However, she's just not strong. She's just not strong. So you can't reliably send her out to pick off a difficult unit. You can't send her off to flank the enemy. You know you can, but it's a risky play, and you have to kind of like accommodate for Vanessa's weakness and her frailty at all times. There are going to be other flyers in this list that are much stronger, and they're much more consistent. The only problem with Vanessa is that the only boon for Vanessa is that you get her so early, and that's really good. The fact that you get her so early is really good, and I like that a lot, and I appreciate that. But I think I, I, I I think she's not consistent. In Fire Emblem, you're always gonna get screwed somehow, right? You're gonna get a stray hit by a 30%. Like for example, on this most recent run, Leon hit a 5% crit on Myrrh and like ruined, and I had a perfect run on the final chapter, and Leon hit a 5% crit, right? So like this is like the type of nonsense that you have to play against, and you have to risk mitigate as much as you can. Characters that are not consistent, right? Characters that are not consistent in combat, which is how you engage with the game, are going to be more at risk for nonsense like that to happen. You're gonna get hit by a stray 30% bow, or a stray 5% crit, or a stray 40% axe, right? And it sucks because you have to run the numbers, and every time you get in an encounter, you're running the numbers, and you can only risk mitigate as much as you can, right? And so would you rather have someone where you have to play the lottery, uh you know uh, the lottery of getting killed 100 times, or play the lottery of getting killed 5 times, right? And I think Vanessa, her inconsistency in being able to do combat kind of speaks to why I can't necessarily like recommend her as like, oh, I'm always deploying her. Like towards the end, I dropped her, especially as I got like the Tethys and Mirror and everything like that. I just dropped her. And so even though I promoted her and everything, and I gave her the angelic robe, I gave her the first energy ring. I think that you get in I think it's chapter 9, the Amelia recruitment chapter. I think, I invested like a lot into her, and she just didn't come out strong, and I still ended up dropping her. So I think, this is like anecdotal, obviously, but I think it speaks to her inconsistency, and I think Franz is the same way. That's why they're not like in the top tier. Um, I value consistency over everything else. Mulder is actually really strong. Mulder's actually really really strong, and he having a healer so early is really good. Not only that, but you have a healer that has really good bases, and he's pretty tanky, and his growths aren't bad either. So he can tank a stray hit. He's not gonna get doubled. He's not gonna get like one shot by like a stray hit or anything like that. For him, like I would just like spam heal on everybody to try to get him to level 10 as soon as possible, and he actually might be like the best candidate for the first guiding ring that you get in the game, right? Once you get that first guiding ring, he makes a great candidate for it, because you can make him you can make him what is it, a priest, and I think he's already a priest. I forget the name, but the foot unit that has Slayer. Um, and you're gonna have access to Slayer. You're not using him for damage. You're using him for his staff. He's a great candidate for the final, the Sacred Stone or the Sacred Twin Staff, that heals everybody in the room. Um, he's just very useful, very strong, very consistent, very consistent. He's not gonna like solo the game or anything like that. But I used Mulder the entire way through, and I had no issues with him. I as soon as I got him to level 10, I promoted him, and I've been using him pretty consistently. He makes a great torch staff, great restore staff user. Right, you want to get your staff rank up as soon as possible to B, I think, or C, so you can get access to restore because you're gonna get towards the especially the Ephraim chapters. They're gonna have so many um, chapters. I think it's like four of them where the enemies inflict stylus, or not even more. It's actually more. I think it's like maybe like five or six, if you count the monster chapters and the egg chapters. Um, they're gonna inflict so much status effects on you. Stone, berserk, rage, um, not not rage, silence, sleep. Just so many status effects that thrown at you all the time, especially towards the latter half of the Ephraim route. That you want to like be able to navigate that. You want to be able to just get rid of that as much as you can. And Mulder makes a great choice. Just give him the torch staff, have him spam it on the Fog of War maps, and he's gonna get like really up there. Yeah, I really like Mulder. Ross, I mean, he's horrible. I could all the trainees are gonna end up here, unfortunately. Ross is the least horrible of the bunch because you get him really early and you can actually like spend time in the prologue chapters to use him. You get him on chapter two, um, which is not bad at all. I'm sorry, chapter three, which is very very early. However, his bases are trash, are absolutely trash, and his growths are trash. The only I understand where they were coming from, right? Because you technically have to level him up. He gets an extra 10 levels, so like if you're gonna level him up all the way up to level 20, then he would have to do like a level 10 and then promote to his first or his second class and then all the way to his third class. I like the concept. Don't get me wrong. I like the concept and I really enjoy the concept. The problem is that his growths just suck. He's just gonna end up on average the same as his dad or the same as Dosla, which you're gonna put so much effort in training Ross, and again, this applies to all the trainee units. You're gonna put so much effort in training Ross, Amelia, Ewan, just so they can end up as on average the same as another unit you get. Now, if they had like fantastic growths where they become really strong, right, and they have that good unit feel, then yeah, people are gonna like spend time to like Nino in Fire Emblem 7, and yeah, people are gonna spend time to grind them up because they become really strong. But the growths are just not there. And Ross in particular, he can get speed screwed really bad. And he already has really slow speed to begin with. I think he starts with like 3 or 4 speed at level 1, and then he has a 30% speed growth, if I'm not mistaken. So, like, at level 10, he's going to have 6 speed, right? Like, this is a game where you need to have at least 20 speed, or like 18-ish. I want to say 18-ish speed at least, so you don't get doubled, and then 20 to 22 speed, or 20-ish speed so for you to actually reliably double everything else, right? And so having a 30% speed growth at level 1 and having 3 speed, you're never mathematically it's never going to happen. So he's just going to get speed screwed. He's going to get doubled by everything. And he just doesn't have like, and his class access isn't great either, right? So he's going to be a hero, a berserker, or a fighter, and none of them are like necessarily great choices. Garcia, I mean, he's better than his son, and he kind of fills the same role as Gilliam. He's just a body that you can put in the early chapters to soak up damage and give it back. He has decent HP, decent strength, very slow. And so again, he's kind of very similar to Gilliam in that regard. They can take damage and give it back, but not necessarily enough for them to do anything beyond that, and then they fall off pretty hard towards the end. And once you start collecting more characters that you want to like actually like focus on and train, then he just becomes a waste of a slot. So if there's Garcia fans, like I'm sure it'll turn out fine if you train him. He'll probably end up as Dosla, but he serves his role and then that's it. Naomi, I mean, what is there to say about Naomi? She's a bow user in Fire Emblem 8. Um, to paint a picture, bows can only attack at two range. So anyone that attacks her at one range, which is like 80% of the enemies, or 75 or 70. Let's be generous and say 70. Uh, 70% of the enemies attack at one range. And the way Fire Emblem 8 does, or at least the frame route, the way it does encounters and the way it does difficulty is by spamming a lot of units. It'll like fill an entire map with a bunch of units that hit hard but are slow. So like they have like lowish hit rates, but they hit really hard. And then there's gonna be like something that's gonna force you to split up your party, and then something where you're gonna need to like uh, go quickly, whether it's a chest or a villager or something, or a green unit, something for you to rush down. That's how Fire Emblem 8 mitigates uh, or establishes difficulty. That's a recipe for disaster for someone like Nami who has really low bases, really poor growths, and is an archer who cannot protect herself in enemy phase. Because the way you want to mitigate the difficulty is by having a really strong, consistent unit like Seth, put them in a choke point, and then have the enemies run themselves into that unit as they go through the choke point and die, right? Because if you wait for everything to happen on player phase, it'll take forever, and then you risk losing an enemy or a unit rather. So it's just not worth it. So you want to be able to. Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Where was I? Yeah. So Nami is just not good. Fire Emblem 8 again. It's a very enemy phase heavy game, and so you want units that are able to take care of business during the enemy phase. And if you're not doing that, then you're not good, right? And not only is she not doing that, she's an active liability. So uh, it's just not even worth trading her. Comb's our first decent character. Oops. This guy, I mean, like he's a thief. He's the only thief you get in the game until like chapter 16, and you get him in chapter 4. So I mean, that just speaks to how useful he is. Anytime you need a fog of war map, anytime you need a chest, anytime you need something stolen, right? There's value in and of itself, right? That's what I mean about providing value to the game, or how a unit provides value, right? This is a rare case where the unit provides value beyond just combat, because Colm can't do combat. What he can do is he can steal and he can get chests and he has high vision, right? And so there's utility in that. So you're not going to deploy him every single chapter, but you're going to deploy him where you want a chest opened or you want something stolen. Um, and the energy ring, I think in chapter 9 of Ephraim's Root, that very first chapter after with Tana and Amelia, I mean, there's an energy ring there. There's like random guiding rings, random uh, promotional items that you can steal, right? And that gives you money. Not that you're gonna be like hounding for money in the game, but like again, it's just stuff that you can do, and there's usefulness in having that utility whenever you want it. Again, it's not gonna be always, but it is useful. Arthur and Lute, they're kind of the same to me. They're both good. And I used both during my playthrough. They're both they're both very similar in that they're both like magic units that have decent growths and then can become capable. However, their capableness or their capability is really consistent or infringent on their contingent, I should say, on their growths, right? So Loot is going to end up being more of a glass cannon combat unit where she has good speed and good magic stat, which is going to allow her to become like a really powerful combat unit. She's a great candidate for Excalibur when you finally get it. Um, and uh, and she gets a horse by being a mage knight, right? Um, so that's really good. I know Sage has a higher magic base total, however, you're never gonna reach that unless you're like ungodly, right? If you have a loot that has like capped magic before promotion, then maybe I would do Sage, but more often than not, you're not gonna get there. And so I think the higher move of being a mage knight is better than the more combat readiness, because at some point it becomes diminishing returns. I mean, being a sage is not going to stop her from being a glass cannon, right? It's not like she's going to get bulky. Whereas being a mage knight can give her canto, can give her higher con, can give her uh, a higher move, right? And so like there's like some usefulness there. Arthur, he's not going to be as combat ready. However, he does promote into a priest, and by promoting into a priest, he gets access to C rank staves and C rank staves. And that means that he's a great candidate for a level 10 promotion where you give him and he immediately becomes C rank in staves, and now he can use some of like the more essential staves in the game like torch, restore, and that's going to give his staff rank really high really soon, and then he gets able to use physic, and his ability to use a lot of staves is really useful, especially in the Ephraim's route where you're like caught with like restore and you're where you need where you need a restore staff because everyone is having either a berserk or sleep or something, right? And every time I saw a a map that had status effects, right? Like stone, sleep, or whatever, then I would bring both Arthur and Mulder, and they would both. I would use both, have them restore, because that's just how. Because my first of all, my luck has been like completely busted this run. It's been so bad. It's just like constantly getting uh, hit by like 20% and like getting crit by 5% and getting hit by 30%, right? And that's not even like accounting for like true hit, right? Or 2RN. Um, like it's even lower if you account for true hit, and I'm still getting hit no matter what. So I was just like completely like so risk averse this run because I my luck was just so bad, and I think that's what's coloring this tier list, the trauma of getting such bad luck. But I think that speaks to how these units should be played, right? And I think or like what these units are useful in. And I think Archer can be more useful, less of a combat unit and more of a utility staff. But he also does good combat, and I think getting him so early, he makes a good candidate, not necessarily for like a combat unit, but like a level 10 promotion, so you can get access to C rank staves and then actually start using him in conjunction with Mulder. Natasha, this one's hard because Natasha is just immediately uh, she has lower bases, but she has better growths. But I prefer bases over growths, right? Consistency is king. You start with bases, growths are just potential, and it's all up to RNG. And I just spoke about how bad my luck was, so I can't trust I can't trust RNG. I can't trust growths. So at the end of the day, it's a matter of how consistent she be. She's a healer, right? So she's able to do healer things. She comes with a Ment staff, which is good for Molder, so there's value in that. But herself as a unit is just not. I mean, she's not bad, right? She's not horrible. She's just not doing much, right? Mulder can already do a lot of the things that Natasha can do, but better. And she is a very stereotypical healer class where she just gets one rounded by anybody. So if you get caught by a stray hit, or you catch her lagging behind, or you have bad map awareness and someone catches you off guard, she's dead, right? And if you're like me, you reset after every dead unit, so you try to beat the game with everybody alive. So it's just not good. But can you use her? Yes, right. Like it's not like she's unusable. And can you get some value out of investing in her? Yeah, sure. And I think that applies to Erica as well. You can get some value in investing in her. But I think there's more value to be had in investing in other units that have more return on their investment. Joshua is decent. Joshua is a sword lock foot unit with 5 move that has really good stats, or has very decent stats, and he comes with a killer edge, or a killing edge. So he's gonna be critting a lot, and so he's someone that you can like again like if you want something dead you can kind of send Joshua over, and he can, like, let's say you need Seth for something else, and then Joshua, uh, and then you still have like another enemy that you want to get rid of that turn on that player phase. Joshua can get the job done, right? He's not horrible, and especially if that person is an axe user. If you have an axe user on your team, then it's done, right? And you can give him a Lancer Reaver, and he can do the same thing with anybody, with all the calves and stuff. So he does have value, um, and he's not bad. He's very combat capable. However, his growths are again not great. He's going to be fast, and his strength stat is pretty decent. But it's going to be falling off because that's just the nature of Fire Emblem 8 and growth rates. Um, but he's just not he's he just doesn't provide much more, right? He's kind of like a better version of our mediocre class, where where the value that he provides is better than something like Gilliam and Garcia, but it lasts longer. And so I think there's value in that. He does fall off though, like eventually he does fall off. But if you want to like invest in him, I think there's nothing wrong with that, especially if you give him like the energy ring that you steal. He's not a bad candidate for the energy ring. Okay. Ephraim, I mean, like, it's his route. You're always going to be deploying him no matter what, but he's also not bad at all. He's going to be very combat capable. He's a foot unit, but has lances with 1-2 range, and his growths are very good. So he's going to be very combat capable very quickly. You're gonna get Chapter 5X with him, Kyle, and Ford, and you're gonna want to be like giving kills to Ephraim as much as you can because you really want him to be as combat capable as possible, especially if you're gonna pick him for his route. And then eventually he's gonna be so strong that he's gonna be taking care of everything, right? Like Ephraim was my go-to for everything, especially after promotion. I would send him off on his own and he would take care of things like fairly consistently with no issues whatsoever. And even in the final chapter, I would like have him send out against Leon. I would have him sent out against the Demon King, and he would do a good job, right? Especially since he gets that Sigmund, I think it's called. I forgot the name, but his his special lance, his special weapon. He's gonna be very 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 strong. And so you're always gonna want to use him, and you're always gonna like invest in him because he's gonna get very strong very quickly, and he's gonna be like your go-to. Um, okay, Kyle and Ford, they're kind of the same for me. Kyle and Ford. Um, uh, Kyle starts with. Oh, sorry. Kyle starts with higher strength and higher defense, but lower speed. Ford starts with higher speed but lower strength and lower defense. Their growths are more or less opposite to each other, where one is more defensive and one is more one is more defensive and the other one's more speed. It really depends how the cards play out. I think on average Kyle ends up being better because he has more defense and strength, and you can give him a speed wing to help him. Whereas Ford, he really needs like a lot of investment to get a little bit more, not a lot, I would say a little bit more investment to get going. But honestly, they're both kind of equivalent to each other. On my run, particularly, Kyle ended up being better because he got lucky with some really nice strength and speed level ups. Whereas Ford just basically never level up strengths, and so Ford and Franz, right, they're brothers, so it's kind of quaint that this happened. But they kind of ended up being strength screwed. They could double, but they couldn't necessarily kill anything consistently, and so it was actually so bad that I ended up making Ford a great knight because I needed the strength boost and I wanted him to have access to axes for the extra strength, um, for the extra damage, and that still didn't save him, right? And so it's just unfortunate, but that's just how the runs go. how the chips fall. Like next run, Ford could be better than Kyle, right? And it kind of depends on who you wanna. You're gonna get like your first Nightcrest is probably gonna be on Franz. Your second one is probably gonna be on whoever's better between the two. And then your third, you're gonna get one third very late or much later. I think it's chapter 14, if I'm not mistaken, or 15, or even 16. And then you can give that to Ford. Um, Orson, I mean, Orson, you have him for one chapter and one chapter only, but he's also invaluable in that chapter because he serves. You can literally he serves as one delete everything button, but two to feed kills for your other three units that actually want growth, right? So Ephraim in particular, but also Kyle and Ford, and so you can actually just take away his silver. I think he has a silver sword, if I'm not mistaken, or it might be a silver lance. I'm not sure, but you can take away his silver weapon, give him some weaker weapon, and he's able to do just tank for everybody, if not dodge altogether, and then you can feed the kills to the other three. And if anything cuts out of hand, or if anything's a little wonky, or like the RNG didn't fall in your favor, you can always send Orson out to kill anything, including the boss. So there's really nothing. In that regard, he's invaluable, right? For the one chapter you get him, he's invaluable, but that's it. So I don't know where to put him. On aggregate, I would say that he probably gives more. He does. You could probably split him down the middle, right? Because he probably, on aggregate, he probably doesn't provide as much value as the people on these two tiers, but definitely provides more value than the people on these two tiers. So you can probably split him down the middle, and just put him there, and I think that's fine. Tana is really good. Tana is really good. Um, and then the problem with Tana is that you get her at level 4, which is very weak. For you get her at chapter 9, no matter the route you go, you get her at chapter 9, and you have her with basically very average bases, but her growths are really good, and her growths are actually more combat capable than someone like Vanessa. The problem is, and the reason why people like Vanessa more is because you get Vanessa 7 chapters earlier, right? You get Vanessa in chapter 2, you get Tana in chapter 9, and so that's 7 chapters where you basically just feed her nothing, but you can feed Vanessa that you can't give to Tana. However, if you do invest in Tana, which I think you should, you're gonna get a character that's much better than Vanessa on average, especially in terms of combat. And Tana was one of my MVPs this run, where she ended up getting some clutch strength levels, and ended up having like 19 strength towards the end, and like something, and had capped speed, as a Wyvern Knight, and had pretty good resistance. Her defense was horrible, of course, but that's at every flyer, um, or every Pegasus Knight. But she was basically like your flank killer, your kind of like rescue knight, someone that you can put on a mountain and can bait aggro. Give her a spear, give her a javelin, she does good. Give her an axe reaver for the axe units, and she does good. So she was basically doing a lot. She was doing a lot of heavy lifting, um, in her after you feed her, right? And so it's a matter of how much you want to invest in her. I think it's worth investing because you get a really strong character out of it. She's just not. She just doesn't come out of the box ready to go, right? Like Ephraim, Seth, they come out of the box ready to go, and they immediately start doing amazing things. Tana, you kind of have to put her in the oven and have her cook a little bit before you really get something decent. But once you do, it's great. Amelia, again, the same with any other trainee. She comes at chapter 9, right? So same thing as Tana and Amelia, but this one's like, which one is worse? You get Ross at level 2, or at chapter 2, when he has the same horrible bases and growths. Amelia's the same thing, except you get her in chapter 9. So there's even less of an argument to invest in here. And this is kind of my problem with Sacred Stones is you have all these trainee units, right? Which are like, yeah, I want to invest in them, and I love growing units and like making sure that they like are well fed and there's like a level of strategy to it, right? But there's no point because they're just gonna end up being, on average, the same they would as the units you get for free, right? Like in the case of Amelia, she might be maybe the same as Franz or Ford, right? And Seth is already better. So like, what's the point in investing? I already have three Pegasus or three Cavaliers plus Seth, so four horse units, and I'm gonna get another one with Amelia. No, right? It's just not worth it. Um, okay, Dusel. I mean, dude, Dusel and Ephraim's route is so clutch. He's so goaded. You get him in chapter 10, right after like Ephraim's route starts cooking. Um, and I love that chapter, by the way, the chapter with Dusel and Cormac. I think it's a great chapter. But you get him, and he immediately starts being useful. He comes so strong. He comes with a, I think he comes with A rank in everything, sword, lances, and axes. So he becomes your de facto axe user for everything, and actually a fantastic Garm user if you actually get his axe to S, because he gets +5 speed from using Garm, and he's a little slow, as you know is the nature of a great knight. But give him Garm and he can demolish anything. And then in chapter 12, in that boat chapter, you can just use Ephraim, Seth, and Dusel. You can put them in a little triangle, and they can just protect themselves and just tank damage over and just tank damage and just do so much. Uh, he's invaluable. He's invaluable. And the moment I got him, I used him in every single chapter, including the final chapter. And he's so combat ready and he's so combat capable that you can like every time you split up, I would always send Seth on one side and then Dusel on the other side. And those would be like my go-to combat guys for everything. Um, yeah, he's just really strong. Really, 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 really strong. Cormag, also very, very, very strong. Cormac is probably the most consistent out of the flyers between Vanessa Tana and Cormac. Cormac has fantastic stats, has fantastic growths. Um, the only problem is that he comes at level 9 with an Elysian whip. So all you have to do is give him one more level and he can promote, right? The only problem is that his speed is not the best. So he can be a fantastic candidate for the speed wing, because the speed wing can give him 2 extra speed, and he can become now a much better flying unit and a much better combat unit. And if you make him a wyvern knight, I think he gets some extra speed as well, as opposed to a falco knight, or a wyvern lord, I should say. Um, and again, Cormac, I got him and I invested a little bit into him, and he became so ridiculously strong. I think he capped strength before even level 20. I think I promoted him on like level 15 or something when he capped strength. He's just so good, so strong, so consistent, so capable. He could just be a little slow. That's the problem. But I think he's probably like the best candidate for the speed wing. And you get multiple speed wings throughout the game. I think you get two. You get the steel one. There's one in the chapter with the first Reeve chapter, and uh, I think that's it. There might be another one. There might be another one. But anyway, you want to just but give those to Cormac. He's Cormac or Dusel. They're both great. La Rochelle, she's not bad. She kind of suffers the same problem as Natasha. She's a troubadour that's level 4 that comes in after chapter 12. Um, she's a little too, it's a little too late. Usually troubadours are highly ranked, right? And are like highly sought after because they're a healer with a horse with higher move. So obviously that's going to be better than a foot unit. She just comes a little too late. For her to really make any meaningful investment. At that point, you can promote Mulder, you can promote Arthur. Her staff rank is really low. I think she starts at D staves or D staves, and it's just such a hassle. After chapter 12, chapter 14, 15, the game really starts cooking up the difficulty. So you don't want to use La Rochelle. You don't want to be using a level 4 Troubadour so late into the game. The game really only has 20 chapters. So it's just a little too late for her. But, she is, but she is a Troubadour, a horse unit Uh, with access to healing. So obviously she's going to have some value. It's just if she came, 10 chapters earlier, she would be top tier. But Dozla, kind of in the same boat here. He is combat capable. He's just very slow. Um, he's just very slow. He's actually not bad. I think he's just kind of like this. Hmm. He's higher. He's higher. I don't know if he's bad. I don't know if he's. I don't know if I'd call him mediocre. I'm probably like between these two. He's not bad. Um, he's not good, but is he decent? I'm not sure. He has a good strength. He can like one shot basically everything, but if he's not one shotting everything, he's gonna take a lot of damage and he can potentially get doubled. So that kind of makes him kind of difficult to kind of use. He is a good access to Garm because he does get 5 strength out of it. You know, I I'll put him up here. I don't think he's that bad. He's kind of like a Garcia if you gave him like an extra oomph. If you like promoted Garcia and he got a couple good levels. Um, Marissa, oh my God, Marissa. I forgot what level she is, but she's a Myrmidon with horrible bases. She has decent growths, but she just comes. I think in Ephraim's route. I think she comes at chapter 14 or 15, and it's just so late. It is so late. Um, and it's so late. And again, she's not even like combat capable either. So and even if she was right, if you invest in her, she'll probably get some return. She's not as horrible as the trainees, but she's again so late. And then she's a 5 move foot locked sword locked unit. So there's really no value in her, especially at that point in the game. Ewin again, you get her at the same chapter as Marissa. What can I say about this guy? He's another trainee, poor growth, poor bases. This time you get him like at the last third of the game. You just want to be done with the game at that point. You don't want to like spend time growing a late game trainee unit. It's just not a good look. Um, Ewan's a little interesting because he can become a summoner. And there's some value in that, but I don't know. I just think I just he's just not gonna be better than any of the other mage units that you get in the game. And again, that rings true for all the trainee units. Tethys, I mean, she's your dancer. You're always gonna want a dancer. Refreshing your units is invaluable. It's probably the best utility resource that's in the game, right? It's like doubling um it's imagine if Seth got to act twice, right? Well, now you can, right? Or if Dusel got to act twice, or Cormag, right? Now you can. So I think she is slow, right? She's 5 units or 5 move, which is a little slow, and she is foot locked. However, you have to play around that, right? You're gonna have to rescue drop. You're gonna have to like move around, and if you don't want to, that's fine, right? It's not the end of the world, but I think she does open up other options and strategies that are otherwise inaccessible to the player if she wasn't deployed. So Garrick, I mean Garrick, you get him late, right? You get him late. So again, like I think chapter 14, and that chapter is like really tough. But he comes level 10 with fantastic bases and a hero crest, and the game's just telling you promote me, bro, promote me. But I would say you could actually hold off on promoting him because the very next chapter you do it is I think a siege chapter, and you can put him in several choke points, especially on the it's the one with the 2 druids that have berserk. On the right side of that map, or I think it's the right side of the map, has a bunch of fighters with axes that you can just put Garrick there, give him an iron blade, or hit the iron blade that he comes with, and then I think he comes with a steel blade actually. So give him an iron blade instead, and then he can just like delete everything. and he's gonna get like a couple levels out of that in and of itself. He's gonna get like at least like 2 or 3 levels because he's level 10 and everybody's gonna be like around level 15 at that point. But his bases are so good that it doesn't matter. And then when he finally promotes, right, you want to promote him to hero, because bows aren't that hot. So you want to promote him to hero, and then he's a great candidate for the sacred twin blade. The starts with an A. I forget the name, but the sacred twin blade is just so good on him, and he becomes a great combat unit as well. So the moment you get him, he's gonna be, he's just gonna be like another in your another chip in your offensive line, right? And he's just very strong. Renak, decent. Um, he kind of takes the place of Calm after you get him. However, there are some chapters where you could use both Calm and Renak, and especially that one chapter, the first Reeve chapter, where you only have 13 turns, so you go on one side of the map to pick up 3 chests, and then on the other side of the map to pick up 3 chests. It's a little annoying to do that in 13 turns, so you can deploy 2 thieves if you want. Um, and then Renak doesn't need a speed, doesn't need a lockpick, so there's like value in that as well. Again, he just provides like utility. On the chapters that you need something stolen or something opened or a chest opened or something like that, or invisibility. Saleh, strong, strong mage with strong bases, strong weapon rank. Just again, like consistent. He's not as amazing as like your other units, as like the top tier, because you can't like necessarily put him alone. And his magic stat isn't like necessarily like so much better to the point that it's like invalidates everything. But he's good. He's strong. He's consistent. You have to play him right, and he'll provide value for sure. Um, and then Ines, he's mediocre because he has great bases, and he has great stats. The problem is that he is a bow user, and bow users in Fire Emblem 8 are just not good at all. So if he was literally any other class, if he was like a cavalier or maybe not a knight, but a cavalier or a myrmidon or a mercenary or anything, right? I think he would have been like much better. He would have been much higher, potentially even like a Garrick tier. Like he would be up here maybe, at least here. But since he's a bow user, you're kind of stuck with him. You also get him really late. I know in the Erica route you get him a lot earlier, so maybe there's value in that. But at least in the Ephraim route, you get him really late. Null, you get really late, and honestly, this guy provides like zero to no value. He comes out. You know what? I shouldn't say that. He comes up at level 10. You can promote him. You can make him a summoner. You can do summoner shenanigans with him. The fact that he's mediocre speaks that there is some value in summoner shenanigans, but the fact that he's not much higher just speaks to like that the value that summoner shenanigans provide is not that much. And so there it is. Myr, one of the best units in the game. You're always gonna use her no matter what. You get her very late. I think it's chapter 16. And there's 2 ways that you can do this. You kind of save her until the chapters that have a lot of the monster units. So the second Reef chapter, where she has to in the Darkling Woods, she's invaluable there. And I'm thinking of some other chapter. I forgot. But chapter 19, and I know maybe chapter 18 or 17. I forget. But the ones that are like predominantly just monsters. Um, the egg chapter. She's very useful in the egg chapter. She's very useful there. I think that's chapter 18, if I'm not mistaken. She's useful in chapter 19, and I think she's useful in chapter 17, and then she's useful in the last chapter. So you have 50 uses. You have 50 uses of the Dragonstone, and her growths are out of control. They're out of control good. They're like ridiculous. So she's gonna have like I had her at level 20 by the time before her Dragonstone ran out, and she had like 20 strength, 20 defense, 20 speed, and then the Dragonstone gives it like an additional 20. So she's going to be one rounding absolutely everything in the game, and she's going to be like your point person for people like Leon, for the Draco zombie at chapter 18, and then for the final boss, and for the Demon King. So you definitely want to use her whenever you can. So the way I kind of used her was I didn't use her when I was fighting human enemies, but when I was fighting monsters, I would use her a lot. And I think the egg chapter, since she's fly, she has 5 move, which kind of blows. But she is a flyer, so she can fly anywhere. And basically get rid of anything. Not only that, but you can put her literally anywhere on the map, and as long as it's a monster that's attacking and not like a bow user, she's gonna like tank it and one round that as well. So she can invalidate so much of the challenge in the game that you're gonna use her always. And then finally, Serene. Yeah, she's here. She's mediocre. Um, she's mediocre. I think she becomes valuable the very next chapter. You get her, I think, at chapter 16 as well. She becomes valuable in the very next chapter because or was it chapter 17? I'm not sure, but she becomes immediately useful because the chapter after is the egg chapter, and you don't really need her to do damage. You just need her to kill the eggs and get there fast enough. And I think in that regard, she's very useful there. So there's some value there. That means that she's not horrible. Um, but her bases are really poor, um, and she just comes in so late. So like it's like Vanessa. It's she would she. This is what Vanessa. She's kind of like a little like if Vanessa got like a couple really poor level ups. This is what she would turn into Cyrene. But at least Vanessa has the entire game for you to course correct, right? With the stat boosting items, with the angelic robe, with all that stuff. In the case of Cyrene, like you're screwed, right? What you see is what you get, and I think it's not a lot. And so I think these are my rankings. I'm gonna come back after I do Erica's route and see what the difference is. I don't anticipate much of a difference, but I'm interested to see how my opinion of the game and of these units change after the Erica route. And I we'll see. Okay, welcome back to part two of my Sacred Stones tier list. This is after I beat the Erica route on hard mode. Same principles apply, same tiering applies. So basically, which characters I think are the best in making sure that you have an easy time or who helps you the most in beating the game. This is based on Erica's route, which on a global perspective is roughly the same as Ephraim's route. It's a little bit more combat heavy. You can take things a little slower in Erica's route. There's less side objectives, less reason to rush, less reasons to split your team up or split your army up. Um, so it's generally a lot more combat oriented. Um, so but it's the same final chapters. It's the same 5 or 6 final chapters anyway. And the Erica route doesn't have any chapters that are extremely difficult. So compared to like Ephraim's route, which has several chapters that are a significant challenge. But we're just gonna go through it again. This one's gonna be a little quicker because I don't have a lot more to add. If I have something to add that I don't think I mentioned on the first part of the video, then I'll mention it. Or any changes between the routes that I think are worth mentioning, then I'll do it. But for the most part, it's gonna roughly be the same. So starting with Erica, I think, yeah, she's mediocre on both routes. Even on her own route, I don't think she's any stronger. Her combat is just not great. Her combat's not great. She has great speed, but low bulk, and swords just don't have enough might to carry the low strength that she has. I will mention that when she gets sick field, when she finally gets her promotion with her weapon, she becomes a pretty good monster killer, and you can park her in a forest tile or a mountain tile, and you can have her basically dodge tank pretty reliably and kill with Sigfield. So in chapter, I want to say chapter 20, which is one of the final chapters in the game, she's a good person to just send up to the north and have her parked in the forest, and she can kill all the Cyclops that constantly, march in. And her speed and luck tend to be pretty high. That she's even good at dodging against the gargoyles with lances and stuff. So she does have some value, especially towards the end, because she can only use sick. She's the only person that can use sick field. But for the rest of the game, it's really hard. I think she only leveled up strength 4 times during my entire playthrough. Like when I promoted her, she had by the time I promoted her, she had 10 strength. So I think the Sigfield boost gave her more strength than her naturally leveling up. So that just kind of goes to show her combat limitation is just really difficult to get across. It's not the worst thing in the world. You can heavily invest in her, and she'll probably end up being decent. You can give her all the energy rings and the speed, or not the speed wing, the energy rings and the angelic robes, and even dragon shields if you're really like up for it. And she can probably be decent at combat and somewhat reliable at combat, especially with her Sigfield weapon. But there's other candidates better for it. Seth, I mean, Seth is just he's goaded in Ephraim's route. He's goaded on Erica's route. I did mention that towards the end of Ephraim's route, you can kind of sense that he's falling off. It's not necessarily that he's falling off. It's that everybody just catches up to him, so he doesn't feel special. And Erica's route kind of illustrated that for me. It's not necessarily that he's um, much better than everybody, or necessarily that he falls off when everybody finally catches up to him. It's that he is just on par with everybody else, if not a little better. So he's just the best. He's the best unit in the game. He's the best unit, arguably, in the series. You can just throw him at any situation. I will say, one of the harder chapters in the entire game, I will say, is chapter 6, which I think is the chapter with the shaman, and there's the spiders that are coming down the mountain to attack the villagers, and you only have a certain amount of turns. The path of least resistance, and the goal is just to kill the shaman. And the path of least resistance is just send Seth with the Silverlands up the north, and just have him bulldoze all the way through the shaman, and he can one round the shaman, and the chapter's over. So, it is the path of least resistance. You're gonna lose out on growing your units, but if you really want to like get that Orion's bolt for whatever reason, you can just go ahead and just send Seth up through the north and across the mountains, and you can just run around that shaman, and then he just becomes, and again, he's able to rescue drop. He's able to protect other units. He's able to tank and to do damage. His res, this is something I'll mention. His res is relatively decent as compared to like most units in this game. Do not have good res, do not have a good res stat or a good res growth. And if they do, they can't do anything else that Seth can do. So he's a relatively good unit if you need to bait like a magic user, the Gorgons, a Sage, and still do damage back. I think he has like res comparable to the Pegasus Knights. So that's another unique thing that Seth can do that is better than everybody in the game. Um, my Franz ended up being so on Ephraim's route. My Franz ended up being strong but slow, and he needed like a speed wing to catch up. This Franz ended up being fast but weak, and he needed an energy ring to catch up. But I think he's not going to end up being better than Seth. He was my Sacred Lance user. I think it's Vidofir or something like that. The Sacred Lance that you get. He was my Sacred Lance user, and towards the end of the game, and I think it just shows that as long as you invest in him, he's gonna come across being good. He's always gonna give you like a return on your investment. It's just a matter of how much or um, how much of a return you're going to get. But for the most part, it's a safe bet that you're going to get a good return on him. You get him so early, you can this early in the game. There's not anyone else that you really want to invest into, right? You don't want to invest into Gilliam or Ross or Naomi, right? And then by the time you have Arthur and Loot, right? Your France should be like pretty strong, or at least like ahead of the curve than from everybody else, and a reliable combat unit. So um, his availability is a huge boon to him, and the fact that he's surrounded by a lot of mediocre units is also a huge boon for him as well. Um, Gilliam, I mean, I didn't even bother using Gilliam this run. I think he's too slow. His bulk is just not good enough to justify a role in his in he it doesn't justify his role at all. Um, he can get clapped pretty hard by those fighters and those bandits. So, and you fight a lot of those in the beginning chapters in the game, in the first 8 chapters, in the tutorial chapters, and he's just slow. So he's not fast enough to uh, his move, I should say, is so low. He is slow in combat, but his move is also low. So he just doesn't justify a slot based on you would have to play like really really slow, and even if you play really really slow, which is very tedious, I should add, he doesn't really come across as worth the play style. He does, he has some use. He has some use. Chapter three. He's one of those guys that you can use to defend against all the bandits. You can put him in one of the uh God, what's it called? You can put him uh in one of the forest tiles, and he can like do a relatively good job at tanking all the bandits. And then in chapter five, I want to say chapter five is just the chapter where you get Loot and Arthur. I think in that chapter you can send them to like one of the forest tiles up in the north west corner, and he's a good distraction um, for all the monsters and the zombies that come down as reinforcements, and he can give good kills, feed kills to Franz or Vanessa. So he does have some use, right? He's not totally useless, and you get him so early that you can pivot. It's not like it's not like he's fighting for a slot in those early parts of the game, but he just kind of falls off really fast. Vanessa's strong. She comes very early. Chapter two is very very early. Um, she or is it chapter two? Yeah, chapter two. Chapter two, very very early. Um, she makes herself useful immediately, right? By like rescue dropping Garcia and rescue dropping Ross, so you can save them. She can like go off and go to I want to say I want to say chapter 7. I want to say chapter 7. The chapter where you recruit Natasha and Joshua. In that chapter, you can go to the village. In chapter 6, I know it's chapter 6, the one with I might be getting my numbers wrong, but the chapter where with the spiders that I just mentioned with Seth, you can have her go to the village really quickly. You can also like use her to save the villagers if you're like really in a rush, or like if you're playing really slow. Um, you can have her. That's a risky play, but it's possible. And then generally speaking, you can have her just fly around and um, and just be useful that way. Her combat is just not good. My Vanessa was weaker on this run than she was on Ephraim's route. She got minimal strength increases, and she like really fell off towards the end. Like not even towards the end, towards like the middle, when deployment slots were tight. It was hard to justify putting Vanessa, because I don't need three flyers, right? Like I don't need three flyers except for like very rare occasions. But flyer utility is always great. It's always warranted. It's always useful. So I'm not gonna say no to it. It's just that her combat is just not great. She's actually someone that I would recommend promoting early, just so you can have the higher move, and then just use her as like a rescue mover, to just kind of help move thieves closer to chests, move your dancers closer, move your five infiltrate move units closer, to move your dancers closer, save someone from like impending doom, and like or like go to like a village that's like really hard to get. That's the only reason I would do that. But I think that's more valuable than her being combat. You can invest very heavily on her, So you can give her the energy ring, you can give her the speed wing, you can give her the angelic robe. I just don't think she's going to come across as very strong. I think I'd rather, especially for the very early ones that you get, I think I would rather just give it to Franz and like to fix up any deficiencies that he gets because his growths aren't the best either, and you can kind of get speed screwed or strength screwed. So I would just do that to patch up whatever weaknesses he has, as opposed to just like giving it to Vanessa and hoping that she becomes a decent combat unit. Because chances are, even with heavy investment, she's not going to be a great combat unit. But she comes really early and she's a flyer, and so she has utility there. Mulder is great. Mulder, I think, is great. I just really think he's great. He's tanky. He has a great amount of HP. You get him super early, so you can start increasing your staff rank really fast. And staves in this game is really good. You have the torch stave, you have the restore stave, you have the physics stave, rescue, um, Latona at the end. You get like a three uses. You get three uses of a heal everything button in the entire map. Which basically is insane. Then and Mulder's the best user for it because he's your first one, and he has the stats and the bases to kind of make up for his poor growths. I just think he's great. I think he's really great. I would just say spam torch and spam heal on everybody until you get him to level 10. And he's actually, you can make an argument that he's like the best candidate for your first guiding ring use. And once he's at level 10, you can just use it, turn him into a bishop. Then he'll have Slayer, so he can do like some miscellaneous help with some of the monsters in the game. So I think Mulder, provides a lot of utility, especially so early on, that no other unit in the game can provide. So I think, and the utility that he provides is very good, and it's applicable for every chapter, which is something like thieves, for example. They are very useful in the chapters where they're useful, um, but but they're only but not useful in any other chapter, right? So if you have like a fog of war map, or if you have, and I also talk about calm right now. If you have like a fog of war map and you have a siege map with a chest, or you need to steal something, right? Then thieves are going to be very useful. But in any other context, they're useless. Whereas Mulder, he's useful in every regard, in every chapter. The only reason I don't put him as like top tier as always deploy is because you have other units that can do the same. So, Archer can do the same. Natasha can do the same, just with a lot more investment. Saleh eventually can do the same. So like there are units that can do the same thing that Mulder can do. He's just It's just a lot easier to do it with Mulder, so that's why he's so good. Ross, I gave it another shot. You get him so early, chapter two, that it's like worth giving it a shot. But I gave him like 3 levels. He didn't level up. I think 3 or 4, and he didn't level up speed once. And he starts with a speed stat of 3. So that just kind of goes to show what you're gonna do with Ross. Um, I think if you're gonna have trainee units, I kind of get it, right? You don't want your trainee units to have crazy growths, because if you're having 30 levels on top of crazy growths, then yeah, he's gonna get cracked, and he's gonna be the best unit in the game with investment. But the opposite, where you have poor bases and poor growths and mathematically more levels, just means that it feels bad, because what ends up happening is that you're gonna invest a lot of time for Ross to turn into another Dozla. And Dozla isn't that great. So that's just kind of where we're at. And I think that and you get harder diminishing returns with L, the other trainee units. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put them right there. All the trainee units are just in the exact same spot where they were last video, or earlier in the video. Garcia, I think similar. He's pretty mediocre. Um, Maybe a little better. I would put him here probably. Not bad, not great, um, not decent, but not horrible. Right? He's just kind of middle of the road. You can use him. Again, he has a lot of HP, but poor speed and poor defense. That means he's not gonna withstand a lot of combat. You're really gonna have to use him like judiciously to make sure you can feed kills to someone else, and that's really the benefit that he can get from him. Um, and that's kind of it. He falls off pretty hard, and his growths aren't good enough to justify keeping him around. So he's good to just help feed kills to other units that need the growth, like that need the investment, like Franz and Vanessa. Namie, I mean, Namie's really bad. Poor growths, poor stats. Is a bow locked unit. At least until promotion, and even after promotion, her combat's not great because it's a sword and a bow at best. So there's not much to say here. Arthur, I actually fell down on Arthur a fair amount. Um, I actually thought Arthur actually fell off for me on a fair amount. Um, he for this on he's just not his combat is just not good enough to justify the investment. Because light magic isn't great unless you have Slayer. And there's no reason for you to do light magic when you have anima magic. So I think the best niche for him is for you to promote him at level 10 and have him turn into a bishop. And then as a bishop, you can get him access to staves, and then he can start working on his staff rank and having access to torch and physic and restore and all the other great staves that Sacred Stones has, and rescue and warp if you want to go out and get it. Um, I think that's really the best use for him. His combat is just not good enough to justify keeping him growing, and keep like investing into him. So I think he's better off as more of like a secondary utility, whereas like Molder is like primary support, right? Just like pure staves and pure staffs. Um, Arthur is like secondary support, like adjunct utility with some combat. He can do combat if necessary. He's also slow. He got speed screwed on my Erica route, and he was very slow. And I had to promote him early. I had him like keeping on pace with Loot, so they can both promote at like level 20. But I gave it up and I promoted him at like level 14 because he just was getting speed screwed, and he just wasn't run rounding anything anymore. Even slow units and even units with low res, because his magic wasn't high enough, and then light magic has low might to begin with, and he was slow. So that's just kind of goes to show. I don't think he's bad. I don't think he's bad because he has some use. But is he? I don't know if he's decent. I think I'm feeling more decent for him. I think he kind of fell off. Lute is definitely strong because she has the growths of a combat unit that's worth investing. She maxed out her magic stat on my Erica route, but she got really speed screwed, and so she couldn't one round anything because she couldn't double. So she got really speed screwed, and I already used up my speed wings by the time I realized that she was getting speed screwed. But that's just unfortunate. That's just how it goes. But her magic stat is off the charts. Her damage is off the charts. She becomes really kind of your go-to magic dealer for most of the game. She deals a lot of damage. She's gonna need support, right? Because she's a really glass cannon type character, but she's just really good at what she does, right? She fills one role, which is doing a lot of magic damage, and she does that really well. And I think on average, she's gonna end up being very strong. So I think she's definitely worth it. And if you were to invest in one of them, I would argue you invest in Loot, rather than Arthur. Natasha, I would say she's mediocre. She's not bad. I don't think she's decent either. She just needs a lot of investment. And Mulder also needs a lot of investment, right? They both start. I think Mulder starts at level 2 or like even level 1. Natasha starts at level 1 or level 2, right? You can't have two clerics that are at level 1 that need investment to level 10. You pick one or the other. Mulder comes a lot sooner and has better stats and bases. Natasha comes a significant amount later, not a lot later, but a significant amount later, maybe 4 chapters later or 3 chapters later, and has worse bases but better growths. And on average, I prefer to have better bases. I prefer bases over growths. So just because it's more consistent that way. Um, so Mulder's just better, has just better benefits for investment. You get him sooner. He has better bases, and Natasha needs just the same amount of investment, but you're starting way later, and but it's not impossible. It's not impossible. It's just that she's filling up a role that's already wholly substituted by a better unit. But she's not bad. She's not bad. If someone loves Natasha and wants to like just be investing all into Natasha, then I don't think that's a bad idea. Just know that Mulder does everything better. Um, Joshua's decent. I think he has good combat. He's sword locked, but he has good combat. I think on my first route with Ephraim, he had pretty good strength level ups, which really helped him out. In Erica's route, he was kind of strength screwed. He didn't really level up strength much at all, so I had to like drop him sooner. I think the same thing applies anyway. I think he's gonna be like a decent combat unit that you get for a couple of chapters to help you kind of take care of things if you really not need something to be destroyed. But I think after the fact, um, he just doesn't provide as much utility, right? His growths and his combat, and the fact that he has to use swords and he's sword locked, even as a sword master, just kind of limits his potential. But he's not bad. He's not bad. And again, like if you love Joshua, right, then I don't see a reason why you shouldn't invest into him. Ephraim is disgusting. Even on Erica's route, he's disgusting. You get him back, and he's already performing so well. He like at level 15. You get him at level 15. His stats are gonna be amazing. His growths are amazing. You can legitimately get him to level 20 on the chapter that you get him back. I think it's chapter 15 on that sand chapter. You can put the regolith, the regolith, and on him, and you park him on a forest tile or a fortress tile, and he can just delete everything, and you can get him to level 15, and he's going to have incredible stats by the time he gets to level 15. I had my Ephraim at level as a Great Lord when he promoted. By level 12 of being a Great Lord, he had basically every stat except resistance and luck maxed out. So, strength, speed, skill, defense, everything was maxed out. He was literally untouchable. And then on top of that, he gets Sigmund, which is a disgustingly strong weapon. And he gets strength +5 with Sigmund, plus dealing, I think it's double or triple damage on monsters. He's going to be your go-to guy of killing everybody in the game. Kill everything with Regilief. Then when you get Hammered, fix the Hammer, fix the Regilief with your Hammer. Then use it again, and then get your Sigmund, and then on all the fucking monster chapters, just use Sigmund. And he's also your go-to person to kill Leon on the last couple of chapters. So chapter 19, chapter 20, or sorry, I think chapter 18, chapter 20, uh, chapter 21, right? So he's like your go-to guy of killing Leon both times, killing the Demon King both times. Um, or the Demon King once, I should say. His combat is out of this world, and his promotion is insane, and his growths are insane. So, always use him. Just always use him. You'd be a fool not to use him. Kyle, I like Kyle a lot. I don't think he's as good as Franz, but I think he's close. I like Kyle a lot. I think his bases are better than Ford's, and I think that helps him kind of get the edge over Ford. Um, because they're if you because again, if you're even if their growths are kind of equivocal, if you have better bases, then on average you're less likely to be strength screwed, speed screwed, or anything, right? So Kyle actually grew into being a very competent paladin when I promoted him, and I think he was like a reliable combat unit. I can use him in most scenarios. he wasn't like exemplary or like over the top good. His resistance was really poor, so he could get deleted by a lot of the magic units, but that's not exclusive to him. He wasn't better than Seth, but he was more or less equivalent to Franz. So I would say, there's nothing wrong with another paladin with good combat. Ford, I think he's still good. I still, I think he, but not as good as the others. My Ford got really strength screwed and speed screwed. Um, he just did not level up well at all. And again, that just goes to show the bases, because his bases were so poor that it's hard to invest into him, right? And you already have three paladins at this point, right? You're gonna have Seth, Franz, and Kyle. A fourth paladin. You're kind of. What are you doing with a fourth paladin that? What are you doing with your three paladins that justifies a fourth one, right? Paladin's arguably the best class in the game, but Sacred Stones is also a game with not a huge deployment number, right? On average, you're deploying 12 units. So, you know, you're going to run into some space constraints. And if you want your combat units plus your flyers plus those you're like developing plus Erica or Ephraim, who's always needs to be deployed, then you're going to run out of space, right? So it's a little tough to justify someone like him when he, on average, doesn't uh, doesn't grow to be as good as Franz or Kyle. That's just the unfortunate reality. I used to, on the previous route, I was like, okay, maybe they're equivalent. And then Ford just was unlucky on this run, but Ford got unlucky on this second run as well, and I think that kind of lowered my opinion of him. Orson, I mean, it's the same thing as I mentioned previously. He's really good. He makes sure that he's like a win button for 5x. Make sure that you win on 5x. Um, and yeah, that's basically very valuable. On one chapter he provides more value than anybody here below him. So I think he's good there. Tana is insane. Um, at first, I was like debating whether or not Tana was better than Vanessa, and now after Erica's route, Tana is on, and especially in Erica's route, Tana is undoubtedly better than Vanessa because her growths and her combat is much better. Her growths are much more combat oriented, and her growths are just much more combat oriented. So for comparison, uh, on Ephraim's route, you get her on chapter 9, but you can't really use her because she's trapped in jail. But on Erica's route, she comes free in chapter 9. And chapter 9 is a relatively simple chapter that you can take slow. So you just have to make sure you save the villages across the ocean. But other than that, you can just take it slow. So you can really baby Tana. And Tana comes in level 4. I think I had Tana at level 4, and I think Vanessa I had at level 9 or 10. By the time I was done with chapter 9 of Erica's route, Tana was level 7, and Vanessa I think was still level 9 or 10. And Tana already had better stats than Vanessa. And that's because she just has better growths. She has better growths than Vanessa. And yeah, there's a 7 chapter or even an 8 chapter difference between the two of them, but it's just so much. It's her. She's actually a unit that's worth investing into because then you're gonna get a really capable combat unit, and you can give her the angelic robe, you can give her the energy ring, and you're gonna get actual good returns out of her instead of diminishing returns. You're gonna get a good return on her investment. Um, I'm not saying she's a lot better than Vanessa, but I think on average, the average player is gonna appreciate Tana more than Vanessa. I know there's some people that are really high on Vanessa who think like she's up here, but I disagree. I disagree. I don't think Vanessa's combat is good enough to justify carrying her for the whole game. Um, Ines, I mean, he's not bad. He's just a combat. He's just a really good combat unit that has the worst weapon in the game, and he's foot locked. So it sucks, but you get him really early in Erica's route, though, right? You get him in chapter 10, so you know You can use them if you're a big bow guy, and I don't think you're gonna be wrong in using them. But I think and again, it's because Sacred Stones, the 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 deployment slot is very limited. So if you're stuck with only deploying 11 units, right, your Lord plus 11 more, you're gonna have a hard time justifying putting an S in there, even if his combat is great, just because Sacred Stones has a limited deployment slot and it's so enemy face dependent, especially in Erica's route. In Erica's route, you're just swarmed with enemies all over, and you're just incentivized to turtle and to just like camp and let everybody come to you during your enemy phase and then die as they run into Seth and Franz over and over. So Garrick, he comes at level 10. He's so good. He's so good. His combat is amazing. He comes ready to go. He comes at level 10. He comes at chapter 10 at level 10, ready to promote with great bases. But in Erica's route, since you get him so much earlier, right? I think in Frame's route, you get him at level 15 when everyone's already like ready to promote. And Erica's route, you get him at level 10 when really you shouldn't, when if you're promoting, you're doing early promotions. So his combat is going to be on par, if not better than everybody else on your army so far. And you get him soon enough where you can actually justify investing into him. Because the next couple of chapters are very combat heavy, and you can really just sit down and take it slow and really like invest into him until he's level 20 or 15 or whatever. So I think in that regard, he's very good. He's very, very good. And hero versus ranger, I don't think there's a wrong answer. I prefer hero because it's better combat. But I don't think there's a wrong answer. And I think he's gonna be one of your go-tos. Get the brave sword on him. Get the Adhulma, the sacred stone, the sacred sword, and you're gonna be like cooking with this guy. He doesn't need any stat booster. He doesn't need any course correction. He's on average going to end up being amazing. So he's one of your no-brainers. Just bring him on everything, and he's going to help you like carry the game and make the game a lot easier. Tethys, she's great. Um, she's fantastic. She dancer utility is great. It's always useful to have. Um, and there's really no real reason not to use her, unless you don't want to bother like ferrying around a 5 move unit. Which again, if you're not going to do that, then stuff like flyer utility becomes less useful, right? But I think her usefulness justifies learning how to be good at manipulating her movement to your advantage. Um, and just to illustrate, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? So between these two slots, you already have 10 out of the 12-ish, right? Deployment slots that you get for most chapters. So that just kind of goes to show that Sacred Stones has a very has is very cramped. Marissa, you just get her too late. Oops. Marissa, you just get her too late. Even in Erica's route, I think in Marissa you get her in Ephraim's route you get in chapter 14. In Erica's route you get in chapter 10, but she's just again it's just so late, and her combat. I mean she has decent. She has good groves, but her bases are too low and she's too late, and it's just hard to invest into her. Um, but if you're like a Marissa fan and if you love Marissa, go for it. I think you'll get some benefit out of her, but I just think I don't think I think even if you like spent like a lot of effort, I don't think it's worth I don't think it's worth replacing someone like Garrick, for example, who's like a similar 5 move sword unit, but with way better performance and no investment. La Rochelle, I mean, again, you kind of get her late. I think you get her in chapter 12 or chapter 11. But she's a troubadour. If you would have gotten her in chapter like 2 or 3, she would be like up here or up here. But since you get her so late, it's hard to justify. It's just to justify her again, and it's because healers they don't level up the same way everybody else does, right? You need to be like healing every single turn and making sure that she's growing little by little. So timing and availability is a big deal with healers because they can't perform in combat. They can't do combat, and their only source of experience is from healing other units. And if you're giving me a level 4 troubadour with like, level 4 troubadour stats around half point in the game while entering the second third of the game, that's a hard argument. So, I don't think she's bad. I think I'd put her here, maybe here actually, and I put her, I don't know, here I guess, but or actually here, uh, but it's hard to justify. Dozla, I think same thing. Um, he's just very slow. He hits very hard, but he's very slow. I think I'll put him like here. He's gonna end up being like Garcia. Like if I leveled up Garcia and invested into Garcia, he's gonna end up like Dozla. And if I leveled up and invested into Roz, he's gonna end up like Dozla. And Dozla's not that great, which kind of shows like their issues. Garcia, you get him really early, so he has some use. Dozla, you get him really late. I think it's chapter 12 with La Rochelle, and I don't think she provides much benefit, or he provides much benefit to Merrick a spot. Saleh is great. I think he's fantastic. I'm gonna actually rearrange this and put this here, and then these two are kind of equivocal. Yeah, and these two are kind of equivocal as well. Okay. Saleh is fantastic. You get him way, 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 way earlier. In Ephraim's route, you get him in chapter 15. I think in Erica's route, you get him in chapter 13. Very strong, very dependable, very consistent. He's not gonna be like he's not going to be like carrying the game like a Seth or an Ephraim or a Garrick, but he's very strong, I think, and he's dependable, he's consistent, and he's a good magic user, and he's another staff user, right? He's not a staff user that you need to baby, and he's not a magic user that you need to invest a lot into, right? So he has a lot of the benefits of being a good magic and staff user without the drawbacks, which is very handy. Cormag is fantastic as well. He's like up here. Great combat. He comes a little later in Erica's route, but he's still great. He's still amazing. Um, he still has great growths. He still has great bases. He comes ready to go at level 9 with an Elysian Whip. And I think maybe a little higher in Erica's route, but still, I think I promoted him at level 16 because he already maxed out his strength before level 20. So that's just a level of like combat efficiency that you're gonna get from it. And then you give him the Philly shield so you don't get like poked by bows. You give him the shield so he doesn't get poked by bows, and he becomes like a tank that only gets damaged by magical units. Which, to be fair, towards the end of the game, there's a lot of magical units, but you have to play around that. But still, fantastic unit, fantastic, great combat, and great combat and great class. Renak, I mean, he's useful. He's useful. He's useful for when you need something stolen. He's useful for when you need to open anything, and get chests and stuff. And then for Fog of War maps, right? For the chapters that he's there, he's useful. For everything else, he's not. Um, Dusel was here in Ephraim's route. I think in Erica's route, he's kind of here. He's just not that strong. He's not that useful. He comes so late, and he's pretty slow. And I think a big thing with Dusel is you get him so early in Ephraim's route, and he's so strong in that route that he can like hard carry a lot of the chapters in the game, and you can get his axe rank up so he can use Garm to fix his speed problem, and you can course correct with a speedwing. Erica's route, you lose him. You have to like really go out. First of all, you get him really late when everybody's already like cooked and cooking and strong and ready to go, right? Like everybody's like at promotion or promoted, um, and you don't have enough time to really invest into his axe rank to like get him to S so he can use Garm. So he does hit a roll. He's great in combat, but not great enough. Like I couldn't find a fit for him. Um, Legitimately, I just couldn't find a place to put him. Because everybody else was already doing the same role, and he just wasn't fast enough or mobile enough to, and his combat wasn't better enough than the guys I already had. So he's not bad. He's definitely not bad. He's great, but I think he has a diminished role in Erica's route for sure. Because you can't course correct him. You can't feed his axe rank. He's one of the best axe users in the game, so he's like a great candidate for Garm, because you get that +5 speed, but he's just not there in Erica's route. Noel, I mean, he's whatever. Um, really poor stats. Very slow, and yeah, he's just not. He's just his performance. He comes so late, so late in Erica's route. That's like even harder to justify using him. He's like borderline here, honestly. But I think he does has some use. You can promote him, um, and have him do like summon shenanigans. But he's like your only dark magic user if you don't use Ewin, which why would you? So I guess there's some value there, but not a lot. Really not. He's like borderline here, honestly. Like he would be the best of horrible tier. Myrrh, I mean, she's fantastic. You need to use Myrrh. Like, uh, just save her. You only really use her in like 3 chapters, right? You only use her in the egg chapter, chapter 18. You only use her in the egg chapter in chapter 20, so you can like have her go and kill her dad, unfortunately. So you can like have her go to the east while everybody's like going to the north. You can send her and her flyers travel west. Sorry, they travel west while everybody's going north and finding all the Cyclops. And she can like clean everything up, and you can get her from like level 1 to level 20 in that one chapter because there's so much combat and there's so many enemies in chapter 20. She is an easy button. She's an easy mode button in that game, and especially in those chapters, she helps with the eggs because she can fly around and she can kill eggs in one hit. And you're gonna invest into her levels, and she's gonna level up a ton, so she becomes really strong really quickly. And again, towards the final chapter, that's chapter 20, and the final chapter in chapter 21. She does great damage to Leon. She can kill the Draco zombie, and she can one round the Draco zombie. She's the only unit that can do that, I think, without like heavy, unless you're like maybe like Ephraim can do it with the Sigmund, but Myrrh is like the most consistent at it, and she can kill Leon while not like dying immediately, and she can also do a lot of damage to the Demon King. So she's just like for every really 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 difficult part, you could just throw her. The only caveat is that you only have 50 uses of her Dragonstone, and it can't be repaired with the hammer. But just be smart about it. Just use her in like those couple of chapters that you really need her, where there's a lot of monsters, and then you're gonna be like cruising. And then finally, Cyrene. I think she's. I actually, honestly, I think she's here. She's like here, tied with Erica, because Cyrene, um, her combat is horrible. She's actually like more or less where Vanessa would be if you actually invested into Vanessa without like giving her any angelic robe or anything. Um, her combat is not great. However, she has 8 move and she has fly utility, and you get her super late, super late. But you get a Silver Lance, and she is really helpful in chapter 18 with breaking all the eggs, right? You don't need to have the best stats in the world to just go off to like the southern eastern corner of the map and just break those 3 eggs that are like in the middle of, stuck in that corner in the middle of nowhere. So you can use her and her 8 move to kind of get you there. The same applies to all the other flyers, but all the flyers have more benefits than Cyrene. Notably, the fact that Cyrene's the last unit you get in the game. And that's it. I think that's the ranking. I kind of ended up yapping more than I thought I would, but it's more or less the same. Um, Erica's route is easier but more combat heavy. Ephraim's route is harder but has more interesting map design. The units, for the most part, they're on average basically the same. But Sacred Stone is easy enough where you can use and invest into anyone you like, and you'll probably have success. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you later.